Behind the glamour of British cinema from the 1960s to the 1990s lay a hidden reality. While we admired their brilliant on-screen talent, behind closed doors, some beloved stars were famously impossible to work with. Today, we expose 10 notoriously demanding and difficult personalities in British film history. Their fierce tempers left colleagues in absolute shock. Before we reveal these dark secrets, please subscribe to the channel and comment below with who you think holds the crown for the worst temper. Your support helps us uncover more. Beneath the polished exterior of an elegant English gentleman lay a personality that struck fear into the hearts of directors and fellow actors alike. For decades, this acclaimed performer captivated audiences with his effortless charm, yet the reality on set was entirely different. To those forced to endure his demanding presence, he was a relentless force of absolute terror. He earned a reputation so infamous that merely mentioning his name in theatrical circles caused a sudden chill. The stark contrast between his brilliant on-screen persona and his behind-the-scenes cruelty remains one of the darkest open secrets of the era. Throughout the 1960s, as his career reached its absolute zenith, so did his unbearable arrogance. Colleagues whispered that he viewed anyone who was not in a leading role as completely beneath his notice. Crew members were often treated with a chilling disdain, as he would flatly refuse to address them directly under any circumstances. One particularly tense production in 1967 perfectly showcased his fiery and unyielding temperament. While filming a massive musical blockbuster, his behavior alienated almost everyone involved. He routinely threw vicious tantrums if the slightest detail did not meet his exacting standards. He was known to stop entire scenes, demanding that lighting setups be completely changed simply because he felt the shadow on his face was unflattering, wasting thousands of pounds daily. His relationships with his co-stars were equally fraught with tension and animosity. He possessed a sharp, unforgiving tongue and would often deliberately undermine other performers to ensure he remained the absolute center of attention. During one legendary production, he developed such an intense dislike for his leading lady that he successfully campaigned to have her completely isolated from the rest of the cast. The emotional toll he inflicted upon his peers was genuinely staggering. Despite his undeniable brilliance in front of the camera, the emotional wreckage he left behind was profound. Directors often had to employ extreme psychological tactics just to keep him relatively calm during crucial moments of filming. His private life was equally turbulent, marked by a series of deeply troubled marriages and broken relationships that mirrored the chaos he brought to his professional endeavors. He simply could not separate his massive ego from basic human decency. Ultimately, his legacy remains deeply complicated by his astonishing capacity for unkindness. While award academies celebrated his artistic achievements, those who worked beside him remembered a man consumed by an impenetrable darkness and endless vanity. He demanded total perfection from the world, but offered zero grace in return. The sheer magnitude of his temper ensured that he would forever be remembered not just as a titan of British film, but as a uniquely terrifying colleague. A completely unpredictable storm of emotion defined the career of this comedic genius. While millions around the globe wept with laughter at his legendary performances, the atmosphere on his film sets was frequently suffocating. The man who could effortlessly morph into any character struggled desperately to find peace within himself. This deep inner turmoil frequently erupted into terrifying outbursts of rage that left seasoned directors and dedicated crew members walking on eggshells. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, his reputation as a volatile tyrant grew to mythic proportions. He possessed an incredibly fragile ego, completely dependent on constant validation from those around him. If he felt slighted, even by an innocent comment or a minor technical delay, his retaliation was swift and fiercely cruel. he would completely shut down production, locking himself in his dressing room for days, demanding impossible apologies from terrified colleagues. His demands were legendary and utterly disconnected from reality. During the filming of a highly anticipated spy comedy in 1967, his erratic behavior reached an astonishing peak. He famously fired his longtime friend and director over a trivial disagreement, causing absolute chaos for the studio. Co-stars were terrified of breaking his intense concentration, as even the sound of someone breathing too heavily off camera could trigger an explosive and devastating screaming match. The brilliant characters he brought to life masked a profound emptiness that he often weaponized against his fellow actors. He viewed his colleagues not as partners, but as direct threats to his supreme dominance of the screen. In one notorious incident, he became so intensely jealous of a co-star receiving a minor laugh during a rehearsal that he aggressively demanded their entire role be severely reduced. He possessed a terrifying ability to find a person's vulnerability and exploit it. This relentless hostility inevitably bled into his deeply troubled private life. His intense emotional instability led to a string of shattered marriages and heartbroken companions. Those who attempted to love him often found themselves subjected to the exact same unpredictable fury that plagued his professional colleagues. He was a man consumed by his own extraordinary talent, trapped in a cycle of dark paranoia that convinced him the entire world was constantly conspiring against his success. When he finally passed away in 1980, the film industry mourned the loss of a truly generational talent, but many secretly breathed a sigh of immense relief. The dark shadow he cast over British cinema was finally lifted. He remains a tragic paradox in the history of entertainment, a man who brought immense joy to the masses whilst subjecting those closest to him to relentless emotional torment. His name serves as a stark reminder of the devastating cost of uncontrolled brilliance. Unlike the refined arrogance of his peers, this towering figure brought a raw, unbridled ferocity to every film set he graced. He was a force of nature, possessing a dark, brooding intensity that made him a massive star, yet his off-screen reputation was completely terrifying. Directors did not merely hire him, they braced themselves for a hurricane of unpredictable chaos. His immense physical presence was matched only by a legendary thirst for confrontation that left many colleagues trembling. During the zenith of his career in the 1970s, tales of his tumultuous antics became the stuff of dark industry legend. He possessed a famously volatile disposition that could turn a peaceful evening into an absolute nightmare within mere seconds. While other actors retreated to quiet trailers, he thrived on cultivating an intimidating atmosphere, daring anyone to challenge his authority. Crew members quickly learned to avoid making direct eye contact when his mood darkened. Working with him required nerves of absolute steel and an endless reservoir of patience. On the set of a major historical epic in 1973, his behavior crossed from merely difficult to downright dangerous. He frequently challenged fellow actors to terrifying tests of endurance, masking his fierce aggression as eccentric camaraderie. Those who failed to match his unrelenting energy were subjected to brutal mockery that completely destroyed their confidence on the production. His relationships with leading ladies and co-stars were incredibly fraught, as his dominant personality suffocated anyone trying to share the spotlight. He viewed acting not as a collaborative art, but as a ferocious battle of wills where only the strongest could survive. This aggressive philosophy meant that rehearsals often resembled tense negotiations in a hostage situation. Directors frequently found themselves acting as peacekeepers, desperately trying to prevent his fiery outbursts. Beneath this terrifying exterior lay deeply rooted insecurities that he fiercely masked with loud, boastful bravado. His relentless pursuit of a wild lifestyle was a tragic attempt to silence the profound inner demons that haunted his every waking moment. The line between his aggressive on-screen characters and his true self became completely blurred, leaving a trail of exhausted friendships and broken alliances. He alienated those who genuinely tried to care for his fragile emotional state. When he ultimately passed away at the very end of the 1990s, the industry remembered a man who was as destructive as he was talented. He was a spectacular, roaring flame that burned everyone who dared to stand too close. The immense shadow he cast over British cinema serves as a vivid reminder of a bygone era where raw talent was often accompanied by absolute madness. His legacy remains forever defined by a terrifying unpredictability that made him a true cinematic monster. A profound theatrical and cinematic genius, yet utterly crippled by a completely uncontrollable and destructive fury. He was once described by his peers as the absolute greatest actor of his generation, but his phenomenal gifts were entirely overshadowed by a reputation for being aggressively antagonistic. Working with him was not merely a professional challenge, it was frequently described as surviving a psychological war zone where no colleague was ever entirely safe from his legendary wrath. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, his sudden outbursts became the absolute dread of British casting directors and producers alike. He possessed a terrifying intellectual arrogance, viewing almost every director and fellow performer as completely inadequate and beneath his level of brilliance. If he felt a scene was poorly written or badly directed, he would not simply argue his point, he would completely halt the production, launching into deeply humiliating and articulate tirades. His absolute contempt for authority led to some of the most shocking and infamous incidents in British entertainment history. During one highly publicized theatrical run in the late 1960s, he famously halted a performance halfway through, aggressively lecturing the audience for making too much noise before storming off the stage completely. On film sets, this blazing temperament translated into a fierce hostility that severely traumatized his unfortunate co-stars and exhausted the crew. He possessed a rare and terrifying talent for holding intense lifelong grudges against anyone who dared to cross his difficult path. In the early 1980s, during the filming of a massive cinematic fantasy epic, his bitter and deeply ingrained hatred for his leading lady was deliberately exploited by the director to create authentic tension. Their behind-the-scenes interactions were incredibly toxic, marked by vicious verbal sparring and an intense mutual loathing that poisoned the set. This relentless combativeness was deeply rooted in a profound and aching inner dissatisfaction that he could never truly escape or manage. Despite receiving overwhelming critical acclaim and adulation from the press, he was permanently haunted by a dark sense of unfulfilled potential and a deeply unsettling paranoia. He constantly lashed out at the world because he was trapped in a continuous battle with his own personal demons, using his fierce intellect as a brutal weapon to isolate himself. When he quietly departed this world in 2011, he left behind a deeply complicated legacy that was entirely fractured by his overwhelming anger. He was undeniably a magnificent and rare artist who could command the silver screen with captivating power, yet his impossible personality essentially sabotaged what should have been an unparalleled career. He remains a fascinating yet deeply terrifying figure in film history, a man whose brilliant light was consumed by his own blinding rage. A voice that could command the heavens was often used to unleash absolute hell upon those unfortunate enough to cross his path. Blessed with rigorous classical training and an undeniably hypnotic charm, this Welsh powerhouse dominated the international box office for decades. However, behind the mesmerizing theatrical delivery was a man consumed by an incredibly fierce volatility. He cultivated a deeply intimidating presence that left many young actors completely paralyzed with overwhelming fear. Throughout the 1960s, his staggering global star power granted him a terrifying level of absolute invincibility within the major studio systems. He ruthlessly exploited this immense privilege, treating every film set not as a collaborative creative space, but as his own personal kingdom, where unquestioning obedience was strictly required. Directors who dared to offer even the mildest constructive criticism were frequently met with a roaring hurricane of devastating and highly sophisticated insults. The sheer scale of his extravagantly chaotic and intensely reckless lifestyle constantly bled into his professional commitments, causing catastrophic disruptions for producers. During the filming of colossal and notoriously expensive historical epics in the mid-1960s, his blatant disregard for daily production schedules cost the frustrated studios millions of pounds. He would simply refuse to emerge from his luxurious trailer if his dark mood dictated otherwise, leaving hundreds completely stranded. His interactions with his fellow cast members were notoriously brutal and ruthlessly competitive from the very first day of rehearsals. He possessed a deeply ingrained psychological need to establish absolute, unwavering dominance over every single person in the room. If he sensed even a tiny fraction of weakness in a co-star, he would systematically dismantle their fragile confidence through biting sarcasm and aggressive intellectual superiority, creating an incredibly toxic and unbearable working environment. Behind the loud bravado and the terrifying earth-shattering outbursts, there lay a profoundly tragic sense of monumental self-sabotage. He was deeply haunted by the terrifying inner belief that he had somehow completely squandered his magnificent theatrical talents for shallow and meaningless cinematic fame. This lingering, agonizing guilt constantly fueled his darkest, most unpredictable moods and drove him towards an increasingly isolated existence, punishing anyone who tried to offer him genuine comfort. When his turbulent journey finally ended in 1984, the global audience mourned the loss of a truly mesmerizing and unmatched cinematic giant. Yet, the dramatic legacy he left behind remains forever tainted by the immense collateral damage of his terrifying and overwhelming personality. He was a magnificent, roaring titan who possessed the extraordinary ability to create absolute magic on the silver screen, while simultaneously plunging his real-world surroundings into complete emotional darkness. Far removed from the incredibly smooth and sophisticated secret agents he portrayed, this Scottish heavyweight was notorious for an exceptionally quick and explosive temper. He possessed a deeply intimidating physical presence that he frequently used to completely dominate every single person in the room. Behind the suave cinematic smile was a hardened, uncompromising brawler who viewed the entire filmmaking industry with a mixture of intense suspicion and outright unabashed hostility. During the skyrocketing success of the 1960s, as he became the most recognizable face on the entire planet, his internal resentment grew to terrifying proportions. He felt entirely trapped by his iconic image and channeled this bitter frustration directly onto the unfortunate cast and crew around him. Executives were absolutely petrified of his legendary boardroom tantrums, where he would aggressively hurl insults and completely shatter any hopes of a peaceful negotiation. His absolute intolerance for perceived incompetence meant that working with him was essentially walking an incredibly dangerous tightrope. During the production of major international thrillers in the 1970s and 1980s, directors quickly learned that giving him a simple instruction could result in a devastating confrontation. He was completely unafraid to halt an expensive production for weeks, demanding immediate dismissals of crew members who had simply annoyed him. A profound and deeply ingrained paranoia regarding his personal finances completely poisoned almost all of his professional relationships. He firmly believed that the entire studio system was constantly plotting to steal his rightful earnings, leading to an endless and exhausting series of bitter legal battles. This intense financial obsession made him incredibly cold and deeply unapproachable on set, as he viewed his colleagues not as fellow artists, but as potential corporate enemies. His interactions with his fellow actors were equally fraught with a chilling and terrifyingly quiet intensity. He demanded absolute, unquestioning deference from everyone, yet rarely offered any warmth or genuine encouragement in return. Younger performers who looked up to him were frequently crushed by his totally dismissive and icy demeanor, quickly realizing that the cinematic hero they worshipped was, in reality, a deeply cynical and fiercely unyielding authoritarian figure. When he finally departed this world in the year 2020, he was celebrated globally as a defining pillar of modern British and international cinema. However, those who actually had to endure his wrath remembered a man who was entirely incapable of compromise. He left behind a towering artistic legacy that is permanently entangled with a reputation for being fiercely combative, remarkably unforgiving, and truly terrifying to anyone who dared to stand in his formidable path. Behind the mask of the gentle, wise mentor that endeared him to millions, this legendary chameleon harbored a chillingly frosty and ruthlessly demanding disposition. He did not yell or throw theatrical tantrums like his more explosive contemporaries. Instead, his particular brand of cruelty was delivered with a whispering, devastatingly polite precision. He possessed an uncanny ability to completely shatter an actor's confidence with a single, highly educated and entirely dismissive glance. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, his reputation as a master of passive-aggressive terror was firmly cemented within the tight-knit theatrical and cinematic communities. He demanded an atmosphere of absolute reverence on set, expecting everyone to tiptoe around his profoundly delicate artistic sensibilities. If a director dared to offer an interpretation that clashed with his own, the temperature in the room would instantly drop as he deployed a weaponized, stony silence. Working alongside him was frequently described by younger performers as an incredibly nerve-wracking ordeal. During the filming of several renowned historical dramas in the early 1970s, his complete disdain for his colleagues became painfully apparent. He would deliberately mumble his lines during rehearsals, flatly refusing to give his scene partners anything to react to before delivering a flawless performance on the final take, leaving his co-stars looking completely foolish. The immense global success he achieved in the late 1970s brought out a surprisingly bitter and deeply resentful side of his personality. He famously despised the monumental science fiction franchise that introduced him to a completely new generation, viewing the dialogue as absolute rubbish and treating the entire production with thinly veiled contempt. His resentment was so profound that he actively tried to discourage enthusiastic young admirers from ever watching the beloved films. Beneath his impeccably tailored suits and flawlessly enunciated vowels lay a deeply insecure individual who constantly battled severe bouts of inner darkness. He was plagued by a lifelong crisis of identity and profound self-doubt, which he carefully projected outwards as icy arrogance. He held on to bitter, decades-long grudges against critics who had offered even the mildest negative feedback, demonstrating a shockingly fragile ego that required constant, unconditional praise to remain stable. When he quietly departed the world in the year 2000, the obituaries celebrated a titan of stage and screen, yet industry insiders remembered a man who was extraordinarily difficult to please. He was an absolute master of his craft, capable of unparalleled subtlety, but his cinematic brilliance was frequently overshadowed by a thoroughly intimidating and joyless off-screen persona. His legacy remains that of a truly magnificent actor who used his sharp intellect to keep humanity at bay. A menacing undercurrent of genuine danger seemed to seep from his very pores the moment he stepped before a camera lens. While audiences were thoroughly captivated by his intense and deeply compelling screen presence, His colleagues were frequently subjected to a completely terrifying psychological onslaught. He was a classically trained actor and a highly gifted writer, yet he used his formidable intellect as a brutal weapon to systematically dismantle the confidence of anyone he deemed weak. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, his reputation for aggressive confrontation became deeply ingrained within the cinematic community. He did not merely want to outperform his fellow actors, he felt an overwhelming compulsion to utterly dominate them both physically and mentally. This predatory approach to his craft meant that film sets instantly transformed into hostile environments where terrified young co-stars desperately tried to avoid catching his cold and piercing gaze. His method of preparation often involved identifying a specific target within the cast and ruthlessly exploiting their deepest personal insecurities. During the grueling production of a legendary aquatic blockbuster in 1974, his behavior towards a younger leading man crossed the line into unabashed psychological torment. He would relentlessly mock, provoke, and belittle his victim between takes, deliberately generating a deeply toxic atmosphere of genuine and profound anxiety. He was entirely unrepentant about the immense emotional wreckage he caused, firmly believing that his cruel methods ultimately elevated the quality of the final production. Directors found him incredibly challenging to manage, as he would frequently ignore specific instructions and intentionally escalate tensions to create an atmosphere of absolute unpredictability. He engaged in highly reckless habits to numb his own demons, which only fueled his combative and deeply terrifying off-screen persona. Beneath the aggressive bravado and the endless intellectual bullying lay a profoundly complicated and deeply troubled soul. He was haunted by a tragic family history and an intense burning ambition that constantly left him feeling deeply unsatisfied with his monumental achievements. He fought a lifelong desperate battle against his own overwhelming inner darkness, projecting his monumental pain outwards onto the unfortunate colleagues who were simply trying to do their artistic jobs beside him. When his journey was suddenly cut tragically short in 1978, the cinematic world lost a genuinely phenomenal talent and a uniquely terrifying presence. He was a spectacular, fiercely intelligent force of nature who elevated every single film he graced, yet his legacy remains forever stained by his capacity for calculated cruelty. He stands as a towering, unforgettable figure in British film history, eternally remembered as an artist who thrived on absolute and pure intimidation. A magnificent, towering rebel with the soul of a poet, he possessed a famously destructive streak that completely terrified the British cinematic establishment. While he could effortlessly project profound emotional vulnerability on the silver screen, the behind-the-scenes reality was an entirely different and frightening story. He was a wildly unpredictable force, fiercely proud, and incredibly quick to transform any minor disagreement into an earth-shattering and deeply traumatic confrontation. Throughout the roaring 1960s and the turbulent 1970s, his reputation as a legendary hellraiser preceded him into every casting office. Producers did not merely hire him, they essentially signed a highly dangerous pact with absolute chaos. He completely refused to adhere to traditional studio rules, viewing authority figures with intense, unapologetic suspicion. If he felt a director lacked vision, he would immediately launch into devastating and highly public verbal assaults. The atmosphere on his film sets was frequently described as surviving a continuous, deeply exhausting siege. During the filming of colossal historical epics in the late 1960s, his fierce temperament resulted in complete production shutdowns. He demanded total and absolute artistic control over his characters, ruthlessly discarding scripts and openly mocking writers. Co-stars were forced to constantly navigate his incredibly volatile moods, terrified of triggering his legendary wrath. His profoundly reckless lifestyle was a constant source of immense panic for studio executives and financiers alike. He possessed an unquenchable thirst for midnight revelry that frequently left him entirely incapacitated when the morning cameras were scheduled to roll. These wild, chaotic indulgences cost productions countless thousands of pounds in unavoidable delays. Rather than feeling apologetic, he would arrive on set with an imposing glare, daring anyone to question his intense methods. Beneath this fiercely aggressive exterior lay an incredibly brilliant mind tormented by a profound sense of inner restlessness. He fought an endless, exhausting battle against his own personal demons, constantly seeking extreme sensations to quiet the agonizing artistic doubts that haunted his quietest moments. This tragic internal war caused him to lash out at the very people who attempted to support his immense talent, leaving a lengthy trail of entirely exhausted friendships and alliances. When his remarkable earthly journey finally concluded in the year 2002, the global entertainment industry mourned the departure of a truly irreplaceable titan. He was an absolute master of his craft, capable of conjuring pure magic from the darkest corners of human emotion. Yet his undeniable brilliance will forever remain inseparable from his terrifying unpredictability and fierce temper. He leaves behind a legacy of immense cinematic triumph, completely shadowed by absolute fury. The undisputed monarch of the British theatrical and cinematic realm ruled his empire with an iron and deeply unforgiving fist. To the adoring global public, he was the absolute pinnacle of classical acting perfection, but to his fellow performers, he was an incredibly ruthless and calculating adversary. He viewed acting not as a beautiful collaborative art form, but as a vicious battlefield where absolute supremacy had to be fiercely maintained at any emotional cost to his terrified colleagues. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, his immense power within the industry allowed him to completely dictate the strict working conditions on his sets. He possessed a terrifyingly sharp intellect that he actively used to entirely undermine any young actor who dared to threaten his absolute dominance of the silver screen. If he felt a co-star was garnering too much attention, he would employ devastating psychological tactics to completely shatter their fragile artistic confidence. Working beside him was a continuous exercise in pure, unadulterated emotional endurance. During the production of highly prestigious dramatic thrillers in the late 1970s, his treatment of his fellow cast members was frequently described as remarkably cold and deeply manipulative. He would intentionally alter his pacing and dramatic delivery during crucial scenes to ensure his terrified scene partners were left looking completely foolish and entirely inadequate in front of the rolling cameras. His intense demand for absolute perfection inevitably extended to his deeply tumultuous private affairs, which were famously marked by intensely passionate and highly destructive emotional entanglements. He expected absolute devotion from those around him, but offered incredibly little genuine warmth or empathy in return. Directors were absolutely terrified of crossing his formidable path, knowing that a single negative whisper from his powerful lips could completely destroy an ascending cinematic career. Beneath the grand, sweeping theatrical gestures and the intimidating, highly regal posture lay a man who was permanently terrified of losing his towering artistic status. His ruthless and aggressive behavior was born from a profound, agonizing insecurity and a truly desperate need to immortalize his own magnificent legacy. He pushed himself to the absolute physical limit, battling severe internal struggles while simultaneously punishing anyone who dared to witness him in a moment of genuine vulnerability. When he finally departed this world in 1989, the entire globe mourned the monumental loss of the absolute greatest actor of his entire generation. Yet his breathtaking artistic triumphs are permanently shadowed by his terrifying reputation for calculated and deeply chilling emotional cruelty. He was an unparalleled cinematic titan who demanded absolute worship from his peers, leaving behind a massive legacy of absolute brilliance entwined with profound, devastating intimidation.